I really am genuinely humbled that you asked me to come. And Cleo was in a little panic. He called and asked me, was I going to be here? And of course, I told him I wasn't pulling up, and I had been here for a while, and I went and just gathered my thoughts. Uh, I don't want to preach a sermon to you all because I could easily do that, and hopefully somebody will receive something in the sermon. But I want to talk with you all about something. It's some material that I've written, and I've really my test group were the inmates in the prisons, and but the reason why I want to utilize this material tonight is because, and I want to qualify it by saying this, that if there was one lesson that I could go throughout the brotherhood and deliver that would be consequential to people of all ages, all of the different levels in the body of Christ, that's the lesson that I would do and do with you all tonight. Not only that, but I am so encouraged by this material that I would go all over the country at no expense to anybody, because I really believe that the church and the community needs this material. And if we communicate this material or communicate this subject to the world and to the community, I'm really convinced that the community will say that those people have the answer. And the reason why they don't come and they don't seek us out is that they don't believe that we have the answer. And somehow, some way, we have to let them know that we do have the answer. And if you don't believe that you have the answer, then we may have to go back and revisit something. But people should come. People must come here, and you must have the confidence to let them know that we have the answers. What are your questions? What are your concerns? What are the issues that are going on in your life? What are the things that are oppressing you? What are the things that are contorting you, that are twisting you as a pretzel? But there is an answer. And the reason why I say we have an answer, because we have the Bible. And the answers are in this great book called the Bible. What I want to talk with you all tonight about is perhaps the most baffling place in the Bible. Now stay with me if you don't mind. Not only do I want to talk about the most baffling place in the Bible, but I also want to talk about, within this lesson, one of the most iconic individuals in the Bible too. Now, you got a lot of individuals that are in the Bible, and we know them, and we know Moses, we know David, we know a whole lot of people. We know John the Baptizer. These individuals, they capture or they captivate our imagination. But perhaps the most iconic person in the Bible, maybe second only to Jesus, is Elijah. Now, what do you all know about Elijah? What do you know about Elijah? Well, this is not a rhetorical question. This is a literal question. He was a prophet. What else do you know about Elijah? He did what? Why don't we expand on that just a little? Did he go to the mountain when he was depressed, or where did he go? And that's the subject that we're going to be talking about tonight. Where did Elijah go when Elijah was stressed, when Elijah was strained, when Elijah was really hard pressed? Where did Elijah go? He went to the cave. He went to the cave. Yes, you're right. He went to the mountain. Evidently, the mountain may have been, the cave may have been in the mountain, but This is where Elijah went, and this is what all of the translations say that Elijah went to. Now, the reason why, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that this lesson is so important is because in this year of the Lord that we are living in, there are more caves today than there has ever been in the history of the world. And the reason why there are more caves today is because there are more people than in the history of the world. And people, when things don't go right for them, they go to the cave. And there are those of you here tonight. The only reason why after you leave here, you're going back home. And you may not leave your home maybe until Sunday, some days later. And then if you go somewhere, most people, they don't go shopping. What do? They have it delivered. They have it delivered. They not only do they have their groceries delivered, but you got a whole bunch of empty Amazon boxes in the back of your house. You know, somebody said, amen. You're going in trouble when you get home. Yeah. But people live in caves today. And that is the thing, ladies, and if we could, ladies and gentlemen, if we could really articulate this to the world about people going to the caves, just like Elijah went to the cave, then I believe that we have put our fingers on the pulse of what is going on in the world today. There are those that are here, and going to the cave or being in the cave is just not an old person thing. It's a young person thing too. I just don't feel like going shopping. And so what I'll do, I'll put my order in at H-E-B and they will deliver it to my front step so I don't have to go anywhere. And there are some of us now, because of COVID, we are working at home remotely. We don't have to go out. We are in the cave. And you know what? We become so acclimated to the cave that we don't want to get out of the cave. Something else that contributes to this, John, is that when Freddie Anderson gets old, when Freddie Anderson gets sick, when Freddie Anderson cannot do what he used to do, and Freddie Anderson is homebound, I am in the cave. I'm in the cave. I'm in the cave. And I'm serious, ladies and gentlemen, that if we can get a clear articulation of what that cave is, then all of the Woodlands will bid a path to the door of this building because they're looking for answers and they want to be drawn out of the cave. The cave is the last place of refuge. Now let's ask the question. And you're right, Elijah was in the mountain or he was in the cave. Why was Elijah in the cave? Why was he in the cave? We can say he was depressed, but there's something else that is going on with Elijah. Why is Elijah in the cave? The same reason Elijah is in the cave, the same reason many of us are in our caves too. I don't care. You could be married. You can be married. You can have grandchildren and children. You can have all of those things and yet still be in the cave. And there are some of you right now, what you're doing, you're rubbernecking. You won't say amen, but you're rubbernecking. You know. Because you know that you are in the cave. A person in an unhappy marriage in the cave. These kids, you think it's only an adult thing, only an old person thing being in the cave? Nope. More children are in the caves than adults. What do the children do? They go home and they go where? In the room. And the only thing they come out of the room for is snacks and supper. The rest of the time they are in the room. And that room has become the cave for them. And we think because we know where they are, well, Junior is in his room. He's okay. No, Junior is in the cave. He's in the cave. If somebody would have realized that Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the guys who did this thing in Columbine, that those two boys were in caves, then people would not have lost their lives. And sometimes when people leave the cave, they leave the cave and they do something very devastating. Why? Because they have been in the cave. Now, the way that you're looking at me right now, you're looking at me, you kind of you're kind of pushing me away. Because this lesson is so relevant. Not only is it relevant to you, but you know somebody in the cave. It's the guy next door. It's the lady down the street. It's your mother. It's your relative that's in the cave. So how is it then, ladies and gentlemen? And I think we have to really qualify this thing with Elijah. But here it is. No dream has a beginning. Everybody is dumped right into the middle of a dream. Well, we don't know where Elijah come from. We only found Elijah when Elijah comes and he has to deal with Ahab. And then it's not going to rain for 3 years and 6 months and all of that. That's Elijah. What does Elijah do when he goes to the widow Zarephath? What does he do when he goes to her house? Indeed. She and her son were about to make little cake, one little cake. They only had a little bit oil and flour. And so, they were going to make one cake and they were going to eat it and they were going to die. Elijah said, feed me first. And he extended that. What do you think about somebody who has that kind of power to be able to do something like that? And then when the widow's son dies, what does Elijah do? Elijah goes and he raises that child. Elijah tells Ahab it's not going to rain for 3 years. And it doesn't rain for 3 years. Elijah is that same one in 1 Kings chapter 18 that he faces off with 450 prophets of Baal. You got to say that's a mighty man. And he tells those 450 prophets, how long you hold between two opinions? If God be God, let us serve him. But if Baal be God, let us serve him. Of course, Elijah gave them the test of who will be God. They cried to their God could not hear because he was not a God. And when Elijah cried to God, he says, I am the only one that is dealing with these guys. And when God answers with fire, and Elijah takes the 450 prophets of Baal and he has them killed. But then what happens? Jezebel tells Elijah, if you're not dead by this time tomorrow, the same thing happened to my prophets should happen to me. And what did Elijah do? Elijah said, I believe in God. I'm going to stand on my principle. I don't care what did Elijah do? He ran. And where did he run to? He ran to the cave. He ran to the cave. Why did Elijah go to the cave? And I think this is important. And I think once we do the forensics on this, and then we have a clear articulation of this, and when people come trying to find answers, and then when they come to you trying to find answers, and the only thing you do is wring your hand and wag your head, say, I don't know about that, then they're going to move on to the next place. And who knows what kind of answer they'll get from the next place because we did not have an answer. And that same situation is the very situation we are talking about with Elijah being in the cave. Why is Elijah in the cave? The same reason people go to the cave today. Why is he in the cave? Someone said he's hiding, he's scared. Well, why is it? And I'm not saying those are wrong, but I want others to answer. And if you don't answer, I will. I threaten every year I come here. I threaten the person who looks the least interested. I'm going to call you. So if you're too busy looking and playing like you're looking in your Bible or playing like you're trying to read it on your phone, I'm going to call you. Why is Elijah? Yes. He felt alone. He felt alone. Was your hand up over there? She said, okay, all right. I mean, she did that, Maybe her hand went up. Maybe she said, hey, yeah. Yes.
To that alone, he thought he was the only one who'd been in need to God.
Okay. Good answer. Good answer. The reason why do people today end up in a cave? And that's some of you right here tonight. I mean, I don't know your business. But there are some of you here tonight that are in the cave. You may be married and have a spouse, but you're still in the cave. And you know it. And because you know it, you don't want to show it. You're going to show that everything is all right. Why do people today resign to the cave? And I think it's an absolutely important reason. They don't feel they don't feel wanted, and I think that's part of it with people today. Watch this, Scott. Let's go back and analyze this thing with Elijah. So Elijah goes to the cave. God asked him, Elijah, what are you doing here? And I'm going to go back and we're going to talk about that question, what are you doing here? Because that question is far-reaching. And Elijah says, you know what? He said they have torn down the altars. They have forsaken the commandments. They have killed the prophets. And by the way, they are looking for me to kill me too. What is Elijah saying? And also, he wished that he was dead. What is Elijah saying? It is the same reason that people they resign themselves to caves today. The reason why people resign themselves to caves today is because, and the same thing that Elijah is saying right there, is that Elijah had a certain expectation and it didn't turn out the way that he thought it would have. That's the reason. But when Elijah says that, Elijah is telling God in no uncertain terms, I have done my part, but you didn't do yours. That's what he's telling God. That's why he said when he faced with those 450 prophets of Baal, and then Jezebel comes after him, he runs to the cave and he tells God, I was jealous of the Lord. The King James Version says that. Then he tells all the other things. Then the final things he said, oh, by the way, they want to kill me too. The same reason that many people today end up in caves is because you have an expectation that does not come out the way that you had planned it. I have a little formula that I normally use when I'm dealing with the men in prison. It is expectation over reality equals satisfaction. Okay, let me say it again. Expectation over reality equals satisfaction. If what is 4 over 1? Or it is a what kind? He said hard. It's an improper fraction, correct? 4 over 1 is an improper fraction because you divide 1 into 4, you get 4. Okay, you get a whole number. 1 over 2 is a what? Just a regular fraction. Okay, 1 over 1 is what? It's a whole number. All right. So expectation over reality equals satisfaction. If your expectation exceeds your reality, will you be happy? No, you won't. If your expectation exceeds your reality, you won't be happy. The same way it is with the woman going out. She's trying to find a husband. She finds a man and she comes home. She rushes home and tells Mama, I found the perfect man. I can't wait to change him. That dog don't want. Yep. Expectation of reality, equals that. So if your expectation exceeds your reality, you ain't going to be satisfied. But the same way it is with 1 over 2, that if your expectation, if your reality exceeds your expectation, then you become a jaded individual. You know what? And that's what happened with Solomon. Solomon was in the cave, ladies and gentlemen. When Solomon wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, he did not write that in his right mind as a young man. The young man read from some of the words of Solomon from Proverbs chapter 3 earlier, and the other guy did a fantastic job in his message. But the same person who wrote the book of Proverbs ain't the same guy who wrote the book of Ecclesiastes. That guy, life beat him down. And so his reality exceeded his expectation, because all is vanity, vanity and vexation of the spirit. It ain't no good. It ain't no good. But 1 over 1 is a whole number. When your reality matches your expectation, you can move forward. That's what happens with people when they're driven to the cave. Your expectations exceed your reality. What do you, yeah. And fast forward. You remember the situation that happened with Naaman and with Elisha? Elisha tells him, go and tell, we do have a prophet in Israel. So Naaman comes to Elisha's house. Elisha doesn't even come out to meet him. And he tells Naaman to do what? Go and wash yourself in Jordan 7 times. And what did Naaman do? He went away mad. Why did he go away mad? He said, surely I thought the man of God would have come out and said, thus and thus, do a couple of hand jives and heal the leper. That was his expectation. But what was reality? Go and dip yourself in Jordan 7 times. Y'all looking at me like you never heard that before. That was reality. And thank God that there was someone in his entourage who said, if the man of God would have told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? But he simply told you, go and dip yourself 7 times in Jordan and you will be healed. Or now the waters of Banner are far, far better than this, all the waters of Damascus, and yet I got to go in Jordan? Same way it is with us, ladies and gentlemen. When we have an expectation and it does not turn out the way that you think it should, then it drives you to the cave. It does. And that's the thing that happened with Brother Elijah. He thought God would have definitely done something different. I've done my part. When he says, I was jealous of the Lord, King James Version, he's telling God, I've done my part. I've done my part. I've been a good wife. I raised these kids. And then he leaves me. I've done my part. I've been a good man. I've not smoked. I've not drank. And yet I come up with cancer. I've done my part. The expectations are the things that drive us to the cave. I give up. I give up. And I'm going to the cave. You know what is the weirdest thing in Old Testament history? What were caves used for primarily? To do what? To bury the dead. And that's where Elijah is. It's a dark, damp place. And that's where the dead is buried. There was an incident that happened. And there's something else about being in the cave. And I hope that I'm hoping that you're warming up to the relevance of such a lesson and how current or concurrent this lesson is to what's going on in the world today. Because you have people, more and more people alienating themselves from one another. They're going into the cave. And they go into the cave and somebody passed by. Does anybody live there anymore? Yeah, she doesn't come out very much. Or he doesn't come out very much. The cave. The cave. Do you all, you remember the situation when David was running from King Saul? If I'm not mistaken, 1 Samuel chapter 22. And David went to the cave Adullam. It is interesting, and I found it kind of funny, ladies and gentlemen, that a cave is given a proper name. It is not the cave in Adullam, even though later on I'm talking King James Version. I don't know what other translations say, but they call it a cave Adullam, and that's where David was. But who else came to that cave? What? Who? No, Saul didn't come to the cave. Saul was in another cave at another time, but this cave here. David's mother and father came to the cave where David was. Not only did his mother and father come to the cave, but everybody that had a complaint, that had a grievance, that had something that was going on, they all went to the cave. What do you have in the cave? A whole bunch of disgruntled people. The reason why people go to the caves is that they have complaints. They are disgruntled about something. I'm not saying that they are harsh, but there is something that I just don't like. I just don't want to do it. I don't feel like doing it anymore. And instead of coming to assembly on Sunday, I'll stay at home and watch it online because it's okay. I don't want to drive. We all and people who end up in the cave. Look at all these people that were with David in the cave. Yeah, I was down. You know how I go to Port Lavaca and I go to the schools and talk to the students. And I was at one of the schools there, and I was at Flex, and I was talking to the students at this alternative school, and there was one guy who pretending like he wasn't interested. I mean, he was just a little bit too fly to listen to what I was talking about, and I started messing with him. I said, man, what would happen? And I do prison ministry work, and what would happen that if you were in a jail and the bars on the jail was made of gold? I pumped it up. Man, gold bars, yeah. Man, are you crazy? You're still in prison. A prison with iron bars is a prison. A prison with gold bars is a prison. It's all a prison. And so when these people came to David, listen to what it says. Of course, talking about verse number 1, that David was in the cave of Adullam, and then his brethren and all his father's house heard it, and they went down, and everyone that was in distress, and everyone that was in debt, and everyone that had a discontentment, gathered themselves with him in the cave. Wow. Well, what do you have there? What do you have there? It's a bunch of disgruntled people who have complaints. Why are you in this cave? When Elijah found himself in the cave, God came to Elijah and asked Elijah, what are you doing here? What's another way to phrase that? Or perhaps another way, what God was asking Elijah. One more time. What are your expectations? And I think that's a good answer. What are your expectations? If and I'm not saying that any of you all are you on the right side of the tracks. If you're on the wrong side of the tracks, and here it is that I deal with these guys in prison, and one day I'm in Huntsville, and I'm in the nightclub in Huntsville. I'm sitting at the table in the nightclub, just grooving and everything else, and one of the ladies that I work with, come up to the table. What would they say to me? Huh? They'll say, what are you doing here? But they'll say something else too. You don't belong here. You don't belong here. You're out of place. Yes, you're right. What are you doing here? But they'll also say, you don't belong here. Look at all these. And that's what God is telling Elijah. You don't belong here. You don't belong here. And those Elijah's gripes and complaints, I was jealous of the Lord. I did what I was supposed to do. Those people that you sent me to, they have broken your commandments. Those people you have sent me to, why am I here? Because they have broken the altar. They have killed the other prophets. And oh, by the way, God, they are looking to kill me too. What does Elijah have in the cave? He's so disgruntled in every kind of complaint. I don't know how it's making you feel. I'm serious, and this is a very serious statement. I don't know how it's making you feel right now talking about the cave. Simply because you know somebody in the cave. And you may be one of these people that's in the cave. It may even be your child that's in the cave. That here it is that she lives somewhere else and her home is unkept. Not only that, but she has gained weight. She doesn't take care of herself. She orders in. She doesn't go anywhere. She's in the cave. And you know what? If you can articulate that to your daughter, to your son, child, you're in the cave. You're in the cave. My sister back home in Louisiana is having some dementia issues, and my sister was a severe hoarder. She had rooms full of stuff. I mean, just full of stuff. She would not leave home. She was, even before she got as bad as she is now, my sister was in the cave. In the cave. One time I went to her birthday is October the 16th, and I came all the way from Huntsville, Texas to have a special birthday time with her. She came outside and we sat on the carport, and she was really wondering, what are you doing here? Well, I came to share your birthday with you. Oh, she couldn't wait to get back in the cave. Couldn't wait to get back. What are you doing here, Elijah? What most preachers do as we wind this thing down, and y'all are making me talk too much, okay? And I need to pause and see. Let's before I wind this thing down and tell you what most preachers do. Do we have any questions or comments about what we're talking about, the cave? Any questions? Well, first of all, am I far-fetched? Am I way off course, off base as far as the cave is concerned? But Church of Christ, come on, you got to have an answer.
We need to be bold.
We need to be bold, and but part of it is realizing what's going on in the world today and how the world is shaping us, and we are not shaping the world. Instead of us getting people out of the cave, we join them in the cave. You can't do that. They need answers, because in the cave is a distorted existence. It's not good. It's not real at all. And if you have real answers, and if these people say, you know what, those folk are real over there talking about the cave, and that, you know what, just like the Ethiopian eunuch, when he was riding with Philip, he asked Philip, tell me, is that man talking about himself or someone else? Because the eunuch is saying, I could see myself in that man who was led as a lamb to the slaughter, could not open up his mouth, cut off from among the people, who shall declare his generation? He saw himself. I've told you before, the eunuch traveled all the way from Ethiopia and went to Jerusalem to worship. Did he get a chance to worship?
On the way home.
Well, John said on the way home, but when he went to Jerusalem, did he get a chance to worship? No, he didn't. Deuteronomy 23:1. He that is wounded in the privy or cut in the stone shall not be allowed in the congregation of the people. This man was a eunuch. And being a eunuch, he could not go into the congregation. He could not go into the temple. He came all that way and went home. And that's why it was so attractive to him when he read in Isaiah 53, is that man talking about himself or somebody else? Because I see myself in that. That's me. That's me. And so when you get up and you talk about something of relevance, something contemporaneous to what's going on in the lives of people, I'm in the cave. I'm in the cave. It's a dark place. Questions or comments? I'm sorry I went off on them that way. So, any questions or comments? Yes.
I think in Mark 10, the rich young ruler,
Yeah.
Jesus is asking a question
Yeah.
bring him out of the cave.
Correct.
You lack this one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be different for every one of us.
Indeed. 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 For those of you who didn't hear, he's talking about in Mark chapter 10, the rich young ruler. Jesus is trying to draw him out of the cave. The young man comes in, he runs through the crowd, falls down before Jesus. Good master, what thing that I might do? And Jesus is drawing him out. He tells him what he needs to do to come out of the cave, and he wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. Same chapter, same book rather. This man there in Mark chapter 5, Mark chapter 6, this man that had the legions of demons, he's in the cave. Nobody could tame him. He lived among the tomb. He cut himself. He screamed incessantly. He was in the cave. The people there in John chapter 5, this man that was crippled for 38 years was at the pool of Bethesda. And Jesus asked him a yes or no question. Will you be made whole? And you know what he did? He gave all of his grievances. Sir, I have no man that wanted to get in the water, but every time I get ready to get in the water, somebody else always gets in before me. And you know what? He was at the cave with the blind, the wilt, the halt, the withered, all kind of other people with every kind of infirmity. They were all in the cave. Just like David's folk came to the cave to meet him, and all of these people who had complaints. This is our message to the world. And this is something that we can pull the world in with that. Now, this is what I'm about to say about preachers. What most preachers do is that this is how they end this story with Elijah. That here it is, that there was a fire, there was a whirlwind, there was an earthquake, and then there came a small, still voice, and it was so. Whoa, was that me? Oh, maybe that's my invitation to get out the cave, you know? But preachers end the lesson right there. It doesn't end there, because what happened was this. You're right. He was in the mountain, and God called him out of the cave onto the ledge on the mountain. Then guess what Elijah does? He goes back in the cave, and God asks him one more time, what are you doing here? And he gives the same grievances. That bell meant what? 5 minutes. All right, 5 minutes. 5 minutes, 5 minutes, or 5 minutes, preacher 5 minutes. All right. So what are some grievances that people have that drives them to the cave? Say it again. The condition of the world. It's a dangerous place. You don't want to go anywhere. Somebody say something right here. Oh, yeah. 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 Indeed. Indeed. It has become, that's why I said earlier, we have more caves today than we've ever had. And the cave is yes.
They lose hope.
They lose hope. That's what a cave is, a hopeless place. And they lose hope. And instead of being reinvigorated, they go down more because they're in the cave. I cannot, my body has changed, things have changed, I can't leave, and this, that, and the other. And you are right that it has become the norm. And when we give, and the word discordant is not a bad word, but when we give a discordant message that this is the norm of the world. And when we say the cave ain't normal, it is discordant. And people will realize that there is hope. There is hope. We can get out of the cave. We can get out of the cave. But we have to have, that's why I said that I would go all over the country at no expense to anyone and talk about this, because you've got so many people that are in caves today and need to come out of the caves. They need to come out of the caves. And that's where we come in. That's where we come in. I've said enough this evening, and I've hoped that it had, I no way possible I could have dealt with all that needed to be dealt with, because we have to see what kind of man. The one thing that I do need to mention, and I think it's absolutely important. Someone said that Elijah was afraid. Do you think Elijah was a powerful man? Right. You know, sometimes that's what we think. Because here it is, I get up in the pulpit every Sunday and I'm preaching and I'm pontificating and I'm marching and I'm getting all excited and everything else, and say, that's a powerful preacher. Elijah was not a powerful man. Elijah was a performer. And he performed. He performed. And his performances ended up being his identity. Be honest. How in the world you're going to face off 450 prophets of Baal, and then one woman get behind you and you run and hide? Because he was performing. And you can have a lot of people that are just performing, and it gives the appearance of power, and they're so fragile, and they're so brittle in their own faith. And then they end up in the cave, and we think, well, I mean, you would think that it just took Jezebel getting after him, then he's going to wish to die. Then he's going to tell God, I've done my job, you ain't done your job. That's what performers do. That's what performers do. When you peel this thing back, and when you open the curtain and really see how things are, I want you to go back and look at it, and I want you to say, Anderson, you were wrong. Elijah was a powerful man and not just a performer, but he was a performer. And that's what he did. He performed with the rain. He performed with Ahab. He performed in all these things. I know Elijah represents the prophets. Moses represents the law. But pull the curtain back, and these men. Last thing, Jesus says in John chapter 17, he says that all that come before me were robbers and thieves. He's saying this, that every man, Moses, and all of those guys compared to me, they don't match. Elijah, in fact, James says Elijah was a man of like passion. He was a man just like the rest of us. He prayed and it didn't rain for 3 years and 6 months, not because of his power, but because of God. And that's what we have to understand. Elijah was a performer. And that's why he found himself in the cave. I've said enough. Thank you so much. Y'all were so good, but so quiet tonight. So, all right, God bless.